Cowards hide while warriors fight. That's what every wolf in the Thornridge pack told Arya since the day she was exiled to the borders. But on the night gunshots shattered the sacred hunt, when she opened her door to 15 fleeing wolves with hunters at their backs, she would learn that true courage was the rarest defiance of all and the most dangerous. Chapter 1. The Exile's Watch. The cabin sat at the edge of everything, the border between pack territory and the wild lands beyond, between belonging and abandonment, between the wolf Arya used to be and the shadow she'd become. 6 years she'd lived here alone, 6 years since Alpha Declan declared her unsuitable for pack life and sent her to patrol the dead zone. Land so worthless, he'd said, that even an Omega couldn't ruin it. She'd learned every inch of it anyway. Every game trail, every cave, every hollow where prey sheltered from winter winds. Every frozen stream that held fish if you knew where to break the ice. Every pine with bark you could strip for medicine. Every ridge that offered a view of approaching danger. The territory no one else wanted had become hers in ways the packlands never were. Out here, she didn't have to watch warriors sneer when she walked past or hear mothers warn their pups not to play with the broken one. Out here, she was simply Arya. Alone, yes. Forgotten, certainly. But at least the loneliness was honest. Tonight the full moon hung heavy and silver above the tree line, calling every wolf in Thornridge to the sacred hunt. From her cabin porch, Arya watched the distant glow of the pack house, warm lights, wolves gathering, the excitement of the run humming through the winter air. Beta Marcus would be leading them east toward the elk grounds. The young wolves would be practically vibrating with anticipation. Families would run together, teaching their pups the ancient ways. And Arya would sit here. Like always. She turned back inside, stoking her small fire and trying not to think about what she was missing. Her wolf paced restlessly beneath her skin, longing for the pack bond she'd been denied, for the feeling of running with others instead of always, endlessly alone. She reached for the kettle to make tea, something to occupy her hands and quiet her mind. The first gunshot cracked through the night like breaking bone. Arya's wolf surged forward, every instinct screaming wrong. Guns on pack land during the sacred hunt, illegal, forbidden, a violation of the treaty between shifters and humans that had held for 3 generations. Her hand moved to the rifle above her door, the one she kept for genuine emergencies. Another shot. Then 2 more in rapid succession. She stood frozen, half in human thought and half in wolf instinct, knowing she should investigate, but remembering Declan's final warning. Stay out of pack business. You're not one of us anymore. The gunfire continued, growing more frequent. Organized. Deliberate. Not her business, she told herself, even as her wolf howled in protest. Not her fight. But when the screaming started, wolf screams that no human ear could hear, but that resonated through her very bones, Arya grabbed her rifle and ran toward the sound anyway. Because some things mattered more than orders. Some things mattered more than exile. Chapter 2. The Choice. Arya moved through the forest like smoke, her wolf senses guiding her toward the gunfire. 20 years of being invisible had taught her how to be silent, how to use shadows, how to become nothing more than winter wind through the trees. When she reached the ridge overlooking the frozen river, what she saw turned her blood to ice. 6 humans in tactical gear, night vision goggles glinting in the moonlight, military-grade rifles raised and ready. They'd position themselves in a semicircle, driving their targets toward the river where the ice was too thin to cross. Professional. Coordinated. This wasn't drunken poachers stumbling onto pack land. This was a planned execution. And caught between the hunters and the deadly ice were 15 wolves. Arya's breath stopped. She recognized the hunting formation. These weren't random stragglers. They were organized, moving as a unit, trying to find an escape that didn't exist. The hunters had them perfectly trapped. One wolf, massive and silver-white, stood at the front, positioning himself between the guns and the others, protecting them even as the hunters closed in. "On my mark," one hunter said, his voice carrying through the cold air. "Take them all." They knew. These humans knew exactly what they were hunting. They had pack schedules, territory maps, tactical positions. Someone had sold them this information. Someone had set these wolves up to die. Arya had perhaps 3 seconds to decide. She could slip back into the shadows, return to her cabin, report what she'd seen in the morning when it would be too late to matter. No one would blame her. She wasn't pack anymore, wasn't responsible for protecting wolves who'd spent 6 years making sure she knew she didn't belong. The silver wolf's eyes met hers across the distance. Even in wolf form, she saw the intelligence there, the desperate calculation, the acceptance of death. Arya stood up, run toward the cabin. Her voice shattered the hunter's focus as she stepped into the clearing, rifle raised. Northwest, through the pine grove. "Go!" Gunfire erupted. She dove behind a boulder as bullets chewed through bark where her head had been. The wolves didn't hesitate. They bolted toward the tree line she'd indicated, the silver wolf driving them forward while staying at the rear, shielding the others. "We've got a shifter sympathizer," one hunter shouted. "Jenkins, Rodriguez, pursue the targets. Rest of you, on me. We take her down first." Arya was already moving, using every trick the dead zone had taught her. She fired twice, not to kill, just to slow them down, then vanished into the terrain she knew better than her own heartbeat. Behind her, she heard the wolves crashing through underbrush, following her lead. Ahead, 3 hunters were cutting through the forest to intercept. She had maybe 5 minutes to get 15 wolves to her cabin before they were all caught and killed. 5 minutes to save lives that might not be worth saving. But her feet were already running, and her wolf was already guiding them home. Chapter 3: The Siege. They reached the cabin with seconds to spare. Arya shoved the door open, and the wolves poured through in a cascade of fur and ice, filling her tiny space until there was barely room to breathe. She slammed the door shut, threw the bolt, and immediately began dragging her table against it. "Don't just stand there," she snapped at the nearest wolves. "Help me barricade this." To her shock, several of them shifted their weight, using their bodies to brace furniture against the door and windows. The silver wolf positioned himself near the hearth, those unervingly intelligent eyes tracking her every movement. Not like an animal watching prey, like a commander assessing an ally. "No time to think about that now. They're surrounding us," a hunter's voice called from outside. "She's got nowhere to go." Arya checked her rifle. 8 rounds left. 6 hunters. The math didn't work in her favor, but then again, nothing in her life ever had. She moved to the window, staying low, and assessed their positions. They'd formed a perimeter, using trees for cover, cutting off every escape route. But they didn't know this cabin like she did. 6 years of living in a structure the pack had deliberately neglected had taught her every weakness. The loose board in the north wall that let in winter drafts. The gap beneath the door that allowed smoke to escape when the chimney backed up. The window frame that never quite closed properly. All the flaws that had made her life miserable were about to become advantages. She grabbed a kettle of boiling water from the stove, a handful of dried peppers from her meager supplies, crushed them together. When a hunter crept close to the east window, she hurled the mixture through the gap. His scream told her it found his eyes. One down, temporarily. Strategic, a voice said behind her. Arya spun. The silver wolf was watching her with those impossible eyes, his head tilted in something that looked disturbingly like approval. She pushed her rifle through the loose board in the north wall, an angle the hunters wouldn't expect. Fired once. A yelp of pain. 2 down, she muttered, chambering another round. The wolves had arranged themselves throughout the cabin now, not cowering but positioning for defense. They were waiting, trusting her, following her lead. The night stretched into hours. Arya rotated between weak points, using noise and shadows to make the hunters think she had more ammunition than she did, more people than she did, more chance than she did. The wolves stayed silent, conserved energy, watched her work with that same unsettling intelligence. As dawn's first light crept through the gaps, she heard it. Splintering wood. The back door giving way. A hunter filled the doorway, rifle raised and aimed straight at her heart. The silver wolf launched himself forward with a snarl that shook the walls. And everything exploded into chaos. Chapter 4. The Alpha's Revelation. The transformation happened between one heartbeat and the next. Where the silver wolf had been, a man now stood tall, powerfully built, with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes that blazed like molten gold. He moved with lethal grace, catching the hunter's rifle barrel and twisting it away in one fluid motion before driving his fist into the man's throat. Arya stood frozen, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Wolves shifted all the time, but not like that. Not with that kind of power rippling through the air like summer lightning. Down, the man barked, and she dropped instinctively as another hunter burst through the front door. He moved past her in a blur, disarming the second intruder with brutal efficiency. Behind him, other wolves were shifting, a red-haired woman, a massive dark-skinned man, a lithe blonde, all moving with the same deadly coordination. These weren't ordinary wolves. These were warriors. The sounds of reinforcements echoed through the forest. Dozens of wolves, all in tactical formation, surrounding the cabin and taking the remaining hunters into custody with military precision. Within minutes, it was over. 6 humans in restraints, her cabin full of very naked, very dangerous-looking people, and Arya backed against the wall trying to understand how her quiet exile had exploded into whatever this was. The silver-haired man pulled on pants someone handed him and turned to face her. His presence filled the room, made her wolf want to simultaneously submit and stand taller. Alpha. Not just any alpha, something far more powerful. "My name is Theron Silverclaw," he said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Alpha King of the Northern Realm. You just saved the lives of my elite enforcement team while we were conducting an undercover investigation into a supernatural trafficking ring." The words hit her like physical blows. Alpha King. The most powerful wolf in 5 territories. The ruler every pack answered to. She dragged him through the forest like a lost puppy and made him hide in her pathetic cabin while she threw pepper water at hunters. Oh goddess, she breathed. I'm so sorry, I didn't know. Don't. His eyes locked on hers, intense and unwavering. Don't apologize for saving our lives. The red-haired woman stepped forward, wrapping a blanket around herself. Your Majesty, we should debrief and… In a moment, Kira. Theron moved closer to Arya, and she fought the urge to retreat. You had every reason to stay hidden. You were alone, outgunned, with no backup and no authority. You could have let us die and no one would have blamed you. He paused, those golden eyes searching her face. So I need to understand. You risked everything for complete strangers. Why? Arya met his gaze, finding her voice somewhere beneath the shock and exhaustion. Because no one should die alone in the dark while others stand by and do nothing. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, perhaps. Or respect. What's your name? Arya Nightshade. Omega of Thornridge Pack. She swallowed hard. Or I was, before tonight. Chapter 5, The Invitation. The hunters talked. Not willingly, Theron's interrogators were efficient and thorough, but within an hour, the truth spilled out like poison from a wound. They had patrol schedules, territory maps, radio frequencies. They knew exactly where the Royal Enforcement Team would be during the full moon hunt, knew the precise moment they'd be most vulnerable. Someone sold you this information, Theron said, his voice deadly calm as he stood over the lead hunter. Who? The man's jaw worked, fear and calculation warring in his eyes. Finally, pack leadership. Your wolves weren't random targets. We were paid to eliminate specific problems. Wolves who knew too much, asked too many questions. He spat blood. Your kind police yourselves. We just provided the service. Arya felt the world tilt. Someone in Thornridge leadership had orchestrated this. Someone had looked at 15 wolves and decided their deaths were worth whatever they'd been paid. She thought of Alpha Declan, of Beta Marcus, of the council members who'd voted to exile her 6 years ago. Theron's gaze found hers across the room. I need you to testify before the Royal Council. Help us identify who in your pack had access to this information, who might have sold it. I can't. The words came out strangled. If I accuse pack leadership, they'll kill you, Kira finished quietly. The red-haired woman stepped forward, her expression grave. Like they tried to kill me. I was Beta of Thornridge until 3 months ago, until I started investigating disappearances in the Dead Zone. Wolves who patrolled there and never came back. When I got too close to the truth, I was marked for execution. She looked at Arya with something like kinship. Tonight wasn't about random poaching. We were all supposed to die here. You were supposed to die here. One tragic accident that silences everyone who knows too much. The cabin suddenly felt too small, too close. Arya's exile hadn't been punishment. It had been positioning. They'd placed her exactly where they needed her, isolated, expendable, easy to eliminate when the time came. They'll kill me anyway, Arya said, her voice hollow. Whether I testify or not. I saved you. I interfered. I'm already dead. Not if you're under royal protection. Theron moved closer, his presence commanding but not threatening. Join my enforcement division. Use everything your exile taught you, the survival skills, the territorial knowledge, the ability to see what others miss. You held off 6 armed hunters with 8 bullets and pepper water. Imagine what you could do with proper training and resources. I'm an Omega, she whispered. I'm not. You're a wolf who saved the Alpha King's life without hesitation, he interrupted. You're a tactical genius who turned a broken cabin into a fortress. You're someone who chooses courage over survival. His golden eyes held hers. Your exile taught you things no warrior learns because they've never had to. I need that knowledge. The realm needs that knowledge. Arya looked around the cabin, her prison, her refuge, her home for 6 years. Then at the wolves watching her with respect instead of contempt. At Theron, offering her not pity but purpose. If I say yes, she asked carefully, what happens to my pack? Theron's smile was cold and sharp. Justice. Chapter 6. The Journey to Truth. Arya had never left Thornridge territory. In 6 years of exile, she'd memorized every mile of the Dead Zone but never crossed its borders. Now she rode in a vehicle with tinted windows, watching familiar forest give way to unfamiliar roads, heading toward a capital city she'd only heard about in stories. The enforcement team treated her like one of them. Not an omega to be dismissed, but an asset to be valued. Kira showed her their tactical maps, asking questions about terrain and patrol vulnerabilities that actually mattered. Marcus, the massive dark-skinned man who'd shifted in her cabin, requested her assessment of defensive positions with genuine interest. Even the quiet blonde, Lissa, sought her opinion on survival tactics. You see patterns, Theron said during a briefing stop, spreading financial records across a table. 6 years of watching from the outside taught you to notice what others miss. So look at this and tell me what you see. Arya studied the documents, wire transfers, shell companies, coded payments. Her eyes caught on recurring dates. These line up with the full moon hunts. Every single one. She traced the pattern with her finger. And these amounts increase after each, oh goddess. They're being paid per kill, aren't they? Specifically per high-value target eliminated. Theron's voice was grim. Wolves who opposed certain alphas, who investigated corruption, who knew too much. The hunters we captured weren't the operation, they're just contractors. Someone much higher up is running this network. The hunter interrogations painted a damning picture. Schedules provided months in advance. Detailed dossiers on specific wolves. Payments funneled through accounts that led back, again and again, to Thornridge territory. To pack leadership. To decisions made in council chambers while Arya sat exiled and alone, never knowing she was sitting in the kill zone they'd created. It's Declan, Kira said finally, her voice tight with controlled rage. Alpha Declan authorized these payments. His signature is on the authorizations, buried under shell company names, but it's his. Arya felt something crack inside her chest. The Alpha who'd exiled her, who'd called her unsuitable for pack life, who'd sent her to the Dead Zone claiming it was all she deserved, he'd been positioning her for murder. Every year she'd survived out there was a year he'd hoped she wouldn't. Every winter she'd endured alone was supposed to be her last. He sent me there to die, she said quietly. Not as punishment. As setup. When the hunters finally came for me, it would look like I'd just disappeared. Like all the others. Theron's hand found her shoulder, steady and grounding. He failed. You survived. And now he'll answer for every wolf he's sold. Arya looked up at him, at the team who'd accepted her, at the evidence that would destroy the Alpha who'd destroyed her life. When do we go back? 3 days. Theron's golden eyes gleamed with something fierce and righteous. We present evidence to the Royal Council, and then we return to Thornridge with an arrest warrant. Good, Arya said, and meant it. I want to see his face when he realizes the Omega he threw away is the one who brought him down. Chapter 7. The Dark Conspiracy. The full scope of Declan's operation made Arya physically ill. Spread across Theron's war room table were 6 years of carefully documented murders disguised as accidents. 12 wolves total, all assigned to Dead Zone patrol at various times. All reported as lost to weather, wildlife, or simple misfortune. All actually executed by hunters who knew exactly where and when to find them. This one, Mira Shadowbrook, was investigating financial irregularities in pack funds, Kira said, her finger on a photograph of a young woman with kind eyes. Dead 3 weeks later. Officially froze to death. Actually shot and her body staged. She moved to the next file. Thomas Ironwood questioned why Omegas were being systematically isolated. Dead within a month. Officially mauled by a bear. Actually murdered, Arya finished, her voice hollow. She recognized some of these names. Wolves who'd briefly overlapped with her patrol rotation, who'd tried to talk to her before vanishing. She'd thought they'd just been reassigned. I could have helped them. If I'd known You'd be another photo on this table, Theron said quietly. He stood close enough that she felt his warmth, his presence and anchor in the horror. Declan positioned you in the kill zone 6 years ago. Every day you survived was another day he waited for the hunters to finish the job. The evidence was irrefutable. Wire transfers from Declan's personal accounts to shell companies. Encrypted communications detailing which wolves needed permanent removal. Political favors granted to council members who looked the other way. An entire conspiracy built on the bodies of wolves like her, disposable, forgettable, easy to erase. The Royal Council convenes tomorrow, Theron said. You'll need to testify. Your survival, your knowledge of the Dead Zone, your witness to the ambush, it's all crucial evidence. Arya's hands shook. If I testify, I'm declaring war on my own pack. Every wolf who's loyal to Declan will want me dead. They already do, Kira pointed out gently. The moment you saved us, you signed your own death warrant in their eyes. At least this way, you take him down with you. You won't be alone. Theron's hand found hers, his touch sending heat through her entire body. Over the past days, something had shifted between them. The way he sought her opinion before making decisions. The way his eyes tracked her across rooms. The way her wolf settled in his presence, calm and certain in a way she'd never experienced. I can't ask you to risk your position for an Omega exile, she whispered. You're not asking. I'm choosing. His thumb traced circles on her palm. You stepped into crossfire for strangers. I'd burn the entire council to the ground before I'd let them harm you. The intensity in his voice made her breath catch. This wasn't just protection. This was something deeper, something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Tomorrow I testify, she said finally. And we end this. Theron's smile was fierce and proud. Together. Chapter 8. The Gathering Storm. The Royal Council Chamber was a cathedral of stone and power, designed to make even alphas feel small before the assembled judgment of the realm. Arya stood in the preparation room, watching through one-way glass as council members filed in 12 of the most powerful alphas in 5 territories, each one radiating dominance that made her wolf want to crawl into the nearest corner. He's here, Kira said quietly. Alpha Declan strode into the chamber flanked by 3 lawyers and half a dozen witnesses from Thornridge. He looked exactly as Arya remembered, commanding, confident, utterly certain of his authority. Beta Marcus walked at his right hand, and behind them came wolves she recognized, wolves who'd turned their backs when she was exiled, wolves who'd benefited from her isolation. "He thinks he'll walk out of here," Arya said, her voice steadier than she felt. "He won't." Theron appeared at her side, his presence immediately calming her racing heart. "We have financial records, hunter testimony, 12 bodies that tell the real story. He's done." A window shattered behind them. Arya dove instinctively as a bullet punched through where her head had been. Theron moved faster, covering her body with his as royal guards flooded the room. They found the shooter 3 buildings away, a Thornridge wolf, paid to eliminate the witness before she could testify. "The second attempt today," Theron said grimly, helping Arya to her feet. Glass glittered in his dark hair. "They're desperate. Earlier, a server had tried to poison her lunch. Before that, someone had tampered with her vehicle's brakes. Declan was throwing everything at her, trying to silence her before she could speak." "This ends now," Theron said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute command. He turned to face his enforcement team and the assembled royal guards. "Arya Nightshade is under my personal protection. Any wolf who touches her answers to me directly." He paused, his golden eyes finding hers. "I'm offering you a formal pack bond. Royal pack. My pack. No one will dare harm you if you're bonded to the Alpha King." Arya's breath caught. A pack bond wasn't just protection, it was belonging, connection, family. Everything she'd been denied for 6 years, offered freely by the most powerful wolf alive. "I don't need your pity," she managed. "Good thing I'm not offering pity." His hand cupped her face gently. "I'm offering partnership. You saved my life. Let me save yours." Her wolf surged forward, desperate for the bond, for pack, for him. But 6 years of isolation had taught her to be wary of gifts that seemed too good to be true. After the hearing, she said quietly, "When this is over, ask me again." Something warm flickered in his eyes. "I will." The council chamber doors opened. A bailiff called her name. The evidence was compiled, the witnesses prepared. The moment of truth arrived. Arya straightened her spine and walked toward the chamber where her former alpha waited, ready to destroy the wolf who'd tried to destroy her. Chapter 9: The Testimony. The 12 alphas of the Royal Council watched Arya with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism as she took her position in the center of the chamber. Declan sat in the accused section, his face a mask of calm confidence. He'd faced challenges before and survived. He thought this would be no different. He was wrong. "State your name and pack affiliation for the record," the head counselor intoned. "Arya Nightshade, Omega of Thornridge Pack, currently serving in the Royal Enforcement Division." Her voice didn't shake. 6 years of surviving alone had taught her how to endure worse than hostile stares. She told them everything. The exile 6 years ago, the deliberate isolation, the dead zone assignment that was supposed to be her grave. The night of the full moon hunt when gunshots shattered the sacred silence. The 15 wolves cornered and about to be slaughtered. Her choice to step into the crossfire and lead them to safety. "The witness is known to be unstable," Beta Marcus interrupted, rising from the witness section. "She was exiled for good reason: inability to integrate with pack hierarchy, disruptive behavior, concerns about her mental state." "I was exiled," Arya said calmly, "because I asked why Omegas in our pack kept disappearing." That brought murmurs from the council. Theron stood, his presence commanding immediate silence. "The Royal Enforcement Division has compiled extensive evidence of a conspiracy involving Alpha Declan and human trafficking operations." He nodded to Kira, who began distributing files to each council member. Financial records appeared on screens around the chamber. Wire transfers, shell companies, payments made on dates that aligned perfectly with deaths in the dead zone. Hunter testimony played through speakers, men admitting they'd been paid to eliminate specific wolves, given schedules and locations by pack leadership. "These are falsified," Declan said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "My pack runs legitimate." 12 bodies, Arya interrupted, her voice cutting through his denial. 12 wolves who died in the dead zone over 6 years. 12 wolves you called accidents. Photos appeared on the screens: Mira Shadowbrook, Thomas Ironwood, others she'd barely known but should have saved. "I found their remains. I documented them. I survived because I was lucky, not because you were merciful. The Omega is fabricating. I have the Hunter's confessions naming you specifically." Theron's voice was ice and iron. "I have your signature on authorization documents. I have testimony from wolves in your own pack about how you silenced opposition." Arya stepped forward, her eyes locked on Declan. "You called me worthless, unsuitable, too broken to deserve pack life." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "But the truth is, you called me worthless while selling our people to be murdered. You exiled me because I asked questions. You positioned me in the kill zone hoping hunters would finish what your cruelty started." She looked at the council, at the evidence surrounding them, at the undeniable truth. "I'm not the broken one. You are." The head counselor's voice rang out. "This council votes to strip Alpha Declan of his title pending full investigation into." Declan bolted for the exit. He made it 3 steps before Theron's enforcement team blocked every door, and the fallen Alpha realized he had nowhere left to run. Chapter 10: Justice and Transformation. The windows exploded inward in a cascade of glass and gunfire. Declan's loyalists, wolves who'd profited from his conspiracy, crashed through every entrance, desperate to eliminate witnesses before the truth could spread further. The council chamber descended into chaos. Arya moved on pure instinct, the same survival sense that had kept her alive for 6 years. She grabbed the nearest counselor and pulled him behind a stone pillar as bullets chewed through the space where he'd been standing. "East Corridor," she shouted to Theron over the gunfire. "They'll try to flank from there. It's the only approach with clear sight lines." Theron's enforcement team moved like a machine, but it was Arya's tactical genius that turned the tide. She knew how predators thought, how to use terrain, how to turn weakness into strength. She directed defensive positions, called out threats before they materialized, turned the council chamber into a fortress using nothing but architectural knowledge and ruthless efficiency. When a loyalist broke through toward the counselors, Arya didn't hesitate. She intercepted him with moves Kira had taught her, using his momentum against him, protecting wolves who'd spent 6 years never protecting her. The fight lasted 7 minutes. When royal reinforcements arrived, 12 of Declan's wolves were in custody, the rest fled, and not a single counselor had been harmed. Declan himself stood in restraints, watching his empire crumble. "You're just an Omega," he said, disbelief and rage warring in his voice. "You were nothing." "I was everything you tried to destroy," Arya replied. "And I survived anyway." The head counselor's voice rang through the damaged chamber. "By unanimous vote, Alpha Declan is hereby stripped of all titles and authority. The trafficking network is exposed across multiple packs. Arrests are being made as we speak." He turned to Arya. "You've saved not just the Alpha King's life, but the integrity of our entire system." Theron stepped forward, his golden eyes blazing with pride and something deeper. "The Royal Council recognizes extraordinary service. with extraordinary honors. His voice carried to every corner. Arya Nightshade, I name you Chief Protector of the Realm. You will lead a new division dedicated to protecting vulnerable wolves, omegas, exiles, those society has forgotten. You taught me that true strength isn't about dominance. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. Arya looked at him, at the council, at the wolves who'd attacked her now kneeling in defeat. 6 years ago, she'd been called worthless. Today, she was being offered power to ensure no wolf would ever be worthless again. I accept, she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. 6 months later, Arya stood in the training grounds built on the ruins of her old dead zone patrol, watching her division run drills. Former exiles, omegas, wolves who'd been told they'd never be strong enough, all of them moving with precision and purpose under her command. Kira headed tactical training. Marcus taught defensive strategy. And Arya taught them what survival had taught her, that the strongest wolves weren't always the ones with the most power, but the ones with the most heart. Your Majesty? She turned to find Theron approaching, and her breath still caught at the sight of him. They'd bonded formally 3 months ago, not just as protection, but as partners. As mates. The Alpha King and the Omega who'd saved his life had shocked the entire realm with their union, but Arya had learned to stop caring what others thought she deserved. I have something to ask you, he said, taking her hands. I know you're already Chief Protector. Already bonded to Royal Pack. But I want more. He dropped to one knee, and Arya's heart stopped. Be my queen. Not as a title, but as a true partner in reforming this broken system. Rule beside me. Change the realm together. Yes, she whispered, pulling him up to kiss him. Always yes. The coronation ceremony was held under the full moon. Arya wore silver and blue, the colors of both protection and royalty, and when the crown was placed on her head, she thought of every Omega who'd been told they were worthless, every exile who'd been forgotten, every wolf who'd been deemed too broken to matter. Afterward, she returned to the training grounds where a young Omega recruit approached nervously. Chief Protector? I wanted to ask. The girl hesitated. What if I'm not strong enough? Arya smiled, seeing herself in those frightened eyes. Strength isn't about dominance. It's about standing in the crossfire when everyone else runs away. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. That's what makes a true warrior. She placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. You're already stronger than you know. I'll help you see it. As the girl walked away with newfound confidence, Theron joined her. Regrets? He asked softly. Arya looked at the training grounds, at the wolves she was teaching, at the mate who'd seen her worth when no one else did. She thought about the cabin where she'd lived alone, the night she'd chosen courage over survival, the moment everything had changed. They said cowards hide while warriors fight, she said quietly. But I learned the truth. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand alone in the darkness, knowing you might die, and protect those who never protected you. She turned to Theron, her king, her partner, her home. That's not cowardice. That's honor. And I'd do it all again. He pulled her close, and together they watched the sun set over a realm they were remaking, one protected wolf at a time.